Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mission Control, a podcast focusing on executive directors and nonprofit leaders and how they strive to make positive impacts in their community. I'm Paul Schmidt, the owner and creative video strategist for UnoDeuce Multimedia, and I'd like to welcome to the show Executive Director of the Love Building, Kwaku Osei. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey man, I'm doing very well. Thank you for that, Paul. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's been all right. So now the name of the program, as you can tell, is called Mission Control. So how we like to start out is to tell us what the mission of the Love Building is.
Yeah. So ultimately, man, the mission of the Love Building is to create a hub for social justice and creative community throughout the city. And the highest hope, so maybe it makes sense to give just a little bit of background about the Love Building in the first place. We are the home to 7 nonprofits, which include Allied Media Projects, our parent organization, Detroit Justice Center, Detroit Disability Power. There's a lot of Detroit, so excuse me for that. But Detroit Narrative Agency, Detroit Community Technology Project, People in Education, Detroit Area Youth Uniting Michigan. And we, as the Love Building, we are also a nonprofit. And so we, as a nonprofit, we are increasingly trying to evolve from just being the beautiful home of those great nonprofits to increasingly being what I'll call a lab. And we're focused on experimentation is focused, I should say, on pushing the boundaries for what community-rooted economic development, control, and ownership looks like within the city of Detroit. But above and beyond that, a lot of our programming, events, and activities are centered around health, wealth, and love. And our highest attention is, when people come into this building, without getting too corny with it, but people really do feel the love here. Our highest intention is to not allow this to become some type of oasis type thing, but to actually, we want folks to come in, get a beautiful experience, and take that back out with them wherever they're going, within the city or wherever they're going across the world, in fact. And so we were hoping that rather than, again, being an oasis, we could actually have ripples of love kind of increasingly propagating from this center, if you would. And then the highest hope, man, is that this becomes a community asset in truth. And the way we will do that is by increasingly allowing the community at large to be able to leverage this space. So we have several accessible spaces and affordable spaces that we rent out, but we're even experimenting with should anyone be throwing, because take a step back, within the city in Detroit, man, it's just, we are abundant with residents that have so much creativity, ingenuity, resourcefulness. And the other unfortunate side of that thing is that not every resident has as many resources as is necessary to bring that genius and creativity inside of them, outside of them. And I think we all suffer for not getting more creative about how we create a bridge for how we allow for that genius inside to come out. And so should anyone be throwing an event, as long as it's free of charge, open to the public, and is aligned with either our 7 values or fits within those buckets of health, wealth, and love, we're experimenting with actually allowing them to use our space free of charge. On the back end of that, we'll assess with folks that attended the event, whether that should be a one-off or it should be recurring. And if we find that it should actually be a recurring thing, then we are increasingly getting clever about how we could continue to get resources to support making that type of programming more robust, but actually supporting area residents or area organizations to be able to do so in a economically and financially sound fashion.
How did you find out about the Love Building? Or was this something that you helped develop, or were you somebody they were looking for?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So interestingly enough, I found out about the Love Building through a couple of friends when they were looking to hire executive directors. So just again, a little bit of context and background. The Love Building is a space that was acquired back in 2018 by Allied Media Projects. And then due to COVID, it took many more years than was initially intended, as well as a bit more money because things started to get more expensive at post-pandemic. And so in any event, this ended up being a $14 million redevelopment. And they did a soft opening September 2023. I've now been on the job since I joined on February 27th of 2024. So I'm just coming up on, in any event, and we did our grand opening September 2024, which was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. But to answer your question, when this thing came up, a good friend of mine sent like the job description my way. And, Paul, we've known each other for a few years now. So, I've been very fortunate that like I wasn't actually looking for anything, but it came across my way. And when I saw it, I wasn't actually that interested. I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank you, but no thank you type thing. And then another good friend about 2 weeks later sent the same thing to me and was like, hey, I think you would actually be excellent for this thing. And they had never sent me anything. So I'm like, okay, but I already made up my decision. So I was like, thank you. But then, Paul, as fate would have it happen, about a week later, I watch a motivational video every morning to start my day. And I just so happened to come across a shorter video. It was like maybe a 9-minute video of Rick Rubin talking about creativity. And he's like, maybe like 7 minutes into the video, he's like, the universe tries to speak to us often, but you got to know how to listen. And so he's like, so now whenever 2 people send me something, no matter how stupid I think that thing may be, I investigate. And I didn't think this was stupid, by the way, but I'm listening to this video. It's like 6 a.m, and the light bulb moment goes off. And it just so happened that I watched that a week before the final deadline to apply for this position. So I'm there in the morning, 6 a.m. I'm like, oh, maybe I should apply for this thing, and then kind of go through this process, and then end up getting it. And the really beautiful thing, man, is I would end up getting a call from them on February 14th. So there's a lot of cheesy and corniness baked into this thing. But literally, I was heading to New Orleans to celebrate my godfather's 75th birthday. I land on the plane, turn on my phone, and literally I'm still just, everyone's getting off the plane. Literally a minute after I turn my phone back on, I get a call from a number I don't know. And it was them telling me that I got in the job on Valentine's Day, that I would become the director of the Love Building. And it was just one of those type of really, really, really special moments. And it's been pretty special since.
Now, you said that at the time you weren't really looking. So what were you doing? What was taking up your time?
Yeah, so I think, prior to this, I had started Pharmacy Food and Cooperative Capital. I had to shut down Pharmacy Food, unfortunately. And that was like about a year prior to this. Okay. And we were doing beautiful things with Cooperative Capital, kind of like reestablishing Cooperative Capital. And so that's what I was primarily up to. And then this thing kind of came across. And the beautiful thing about it is when I joined the organization, what I started to recognize very early on was like, there were so many things that I had been attempting to do within the community on my own time, on my own dime. My dime is literally 2 nickels that you can, put to, so it doesn't stretch that far. When I joined this organization was the first time since I've been trying to do really community oriented, like really, really specific, like social entrepreneurial work. It was the first time I came into a place that kind of had infrastructure set up. And then I've been very fortunate to be, and whereas before I think I was doing things again, kind of on my own, kind of being my own island. Now I've come into an organization that has great people. We're now a team of 7 people within the Love Building, but even more than that, we have 7 organizations that are here doing really, really, really good work. That are all, though we're all distinct in our own right, the common thread that kind of unites us is that each of us in our own kind of way is basically like creating a new pathway, or creating a new pathway to support more joy and liberation for all Detroiters. And so it's been really, really rich to finally feel like I found a home and a team and a bunch of committed colleagues that are really in this work. It's been really rich.
Well, what's interesting to me is you've been on boards, you've been doing a lot of stuff within the community, but is this your first time really landing as a nonprofit leadership, as leading this charge with this group? Is this your first time doing it that way?
Correct. The first formal, because to your point, I'm the board president of Bridging Communities. I've been the board president. I've been on the board since 2016, but I've been board president for the last 3 years. I also sit on the boards of Fair Food Network, Detroit Community Wealth Fund, the Economic Development Corporation for the city of Detroit. So I've been on the board of several nonprofits and have been from a governance perspective, and then some of these nonprofits actually in a working capacity, working board capacity. But this is my first time actually formally outside of volunteer work, formally being engaged in nonprofit leadership. Yeah.
And so how has that part been in the fact that it is a different type of organization than what you're kind of used to day to day?
That's right.
You've overseen, but at the same time, you're like, oh, so this is what the nuts and bolts are.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what you've experienced over the last year in transitioning into this position, as well as transitioning, pivoting the organization to where it is.
Yeah, appreciate that question. So I guess it makes sense to maybe provide a little bit of background, right, for folks that may not be familiar with my professional journey. So, I started my career consulting with Deloitte. And while I bounced around quite a bit in that organization, just trying to get the most meaningful experience I possibly could, I primarily consulted for federal agencies, right? And so I gotten to see some government stuff there. But then after leaving Deloitte and moving to Detroit, I got the opportunity of a lifetime where I was working with Dan Gilbert in special projects. And after working close with him for a year, we started a company together, which was just a dream come true. And I led that company as CEO for a little over a year. And so a lot of my experience from that standpoint up until that point could be considered, well, really, it was corporate. It was, there was still a lot of I've always been entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, if you would, regardless of where I've been. So a lot of that has carried forward. But after leaving Rock Ventures and the startup we co-founded, I then got recruited to a local government contracting firm in DC, where I was a junior partner of this firm. And long story short, man, a thing that I really appreciate is I've kind of gotten to see how some big corporations work, how some of the federal government works through stuff that I did with the Department of Treasury and the Department of Health and Human Services. I've also gotten to see some of the inner workings of municipalities, local government. And now here I'm at nonprofit and kind of getting to learn the nuts and bolts, to your point, of that. And while there is a lot that you could take from, because organizations are organizations, at the end of the day, right? It's really how you are bringing together people, how you're basically creating as much as you can a harmonious team to carry out some type of mission and vision. And so that is more or less the same, but how nonprofits work compared to how municipalities work, kind of, if you would, or even how corporations work, kind of the best practices or the lay of the land has been somewhat of adjustment. But man, I've been adjusting. And what I found is that nonprofits are full of people that I think are really what I'll call right-hearted and kind-minded. And also then, and it kind of depends, because what I'm finding is that there are more people, especially in my generation, that are increasingly trying to find more impactful, meaningful work. So it's not as unique as it maybe used to be for someone to go from a corporate position to going to nonprofits. So you have folks that have a myriad experiences, but what I'll share is that there is a certain level of accountability that corporations demand that isn't demanded in either governments or nonprofits. And I think because of that accountability, because at the end of the day, if you're not profitable, then you will soon be done. That doesn't quite exist the same way, although we have our parallels in the nonprofit space. So kind of understanding like there is a need to be, and I think it's purposefully, to be more intentional, to be a bit more slower paced to allow for the intentionality so that you're being considerate of all stakeholders as we're making moves, as we're trying to honor our mission and vision and also try to do good work. But what I'll say, man, is I've really tried to bring a lot of what I learned in my previous experiences here while expecting that this is an entirely different kind of animal, if you would. And I think that the melding of the thing, it isn't always the cleanest transition, but I'm finding that there is a lot that nonprofits can stand to learn from corporations and how some corporations operate, and most importantly, vice versa. And so the kind of melding is, I think, where there's some real magic, especially with where we are today. If we take a kind of a full step back and just look at where we are, putting like a kind of societal lens on where we are, right? There's a number of, if you look at almost every pillar that leads to a decently functioning society, in some way, the majority of our kind of institutions are failing us in some way. And I think it's because there hasn't been enough of this melding and merging. There's something to kind of gain from each of these type of different organization archetypes, if you would. And I consider myself very fortunate and lucky to have landed here, again, surrounded by a lot of great people on my team, but also great organizations that have kind of been leading the way because they have provided a pathway for me to learn from, to be able to kind of get up to speed with the best practices as far as what some of the best nonprofits do. But I'm able to bring some things that I think allow for some innovation or some fresh thinking, if you would.
Well, not only that, but I mean, with your experience and where you've been, you're able to, like you said, meld the experience of being in the corporate world with this new nonprofit structure because you need that partnership. You need that partnership to be successful. And so, what things have you cherry picked from your corporate time to kind of like steer you to the future with the love building? What kind of things are you like, if there's partnerships, if there's sponsorships, or what kind of things, because that's just a unique perspective that you bring to a nonprofit that a lot of folks don't have.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you're really looking forward to bringing into the love building from that world?
Yeah, there's maybe three big things I'd share. I kind of have this like overarching attitude of like combine and conquer as it relates to like collaboration and partnership, and doing strategic partnerships. What I found in Detroit, man, is that like everything we need is here. That's like actually a true statement. I've now seen it from all the different aspects. The issue, however, is that like some of that stuff that we need is here on this side of the city. Some of the other stuff is on this side of the city. And because I think so many people are ingrained in their own specific thing, there isn't too much cross-pollination, or there is a tremendous amount of duplication of efforts going on. I actually don't have any issue with that because, how I go about doing something and how you might go about doing something, Paul, we may be thinking about the same thing, but how we will go about actually like approaching it will be completely different, which will yield different results. The problem I have is that more often than not, you and I doing the same thing aren't even aware that we're doing the same thing. And so a beautiful thing that has happened for us is because we have so many people coming into our space, and because we have a couple of team members that are often meeting with different community organizations, leaders, and different area residents, we're learning about a bunch of different things that are going on, and we're kind of starting to be able to play this like special cross-pollination role, almost like a bee. We're picking up different things, and then we're starting to make connections. We're connecting dots that hadn't been made. I guess the point I'm looking to make is that like I've learned that everything is here, but it's so disjointed, or there's so many disconnected pockets of energy. And unfortunately, while we have everything we need, we don't have so much abundance of resources that we could afford to be as disjointed as we are at this moment. And so a special role I think we play is to be a connector, facilitator, and a convener. And one example of that we did several months ago now, but it was a really rich one, is we did this Earn a Bike program. I have to shoot you the link so that this makes sense to anyone that listens or views this. But basically, man, we got together 4 organizations to basically do this like beautiful cycling education for area youth. And at the end of this like day of education around cycling, we gave them bikes. And this was, we did this again in conjunction with 4 organizations that will be listed in the link that I send you. But that's the power. I mean, that's something that I think there's an appetite to do stuff like that. But again, if you're kind of just locked into your own work and you're not, that type of stuff won't just magically happen on its own. And it really does take a connector and a facilitator to make some of those type of activities happen. Another thing that I think I'm bringing here is kind of experimental mindset. We got to, again, because like people, there are a number of things that we're doing that is aspirational, and then there are some things that people actually depend on what we're doing. So we respect those respective boundaries, but wherever we can, I've really impressed on my team that like, we should be trying things. We should experiment. And ideally, if we're going to like, there's a number of things, because like, in order, like, I could say this, everything we've done up until this point has gotten us to where we are today, right? And what I've often seen is people try to rely on proven, tried and true solutions. But the issue with a number of the solutions, especially when you think about nonprofits and or in the community development space, is like the tried and true and the proven stuff hasn't solved the issue. So we actually got to start like trying wildly different things. We actually got to start experimenting with like new solutions that really get at the root of some of the biggest problems and challenges that we are confronted with within our respective community. And so a thing that I've really impressed on my team that we've really picked up on is like, we're experimenting, and that's going to require a certain amount of failure. However, we can learn from those failures, and to the extent that we could actually basically arrange our experiments in such a way that we could fail fast or fail while being really, really resourceful for how we're leveraging resources, so that so much resources don't go into an experiment, then we can learn a tremendous amount, and that will support us shifting in the ways necessary to be able to actually solve real systemic issues. And so through some of the experimentation, we've already learned a tremendous amount. One example I'll give you is what we found is that this is true of nonprofits, startups, and small businesses, but we all suffer from the same issue in that our ability to access top talent is really difficult. Most top talent are going to the tech startups, law firms, investment banking, private equity. They're either going to, basically, they're going where all the money is. So the largest corporations and the where the money's at. And essentially, what I've learned is that specifically as it relates to nonprofits and small businesses, even if we were able to attract top talent, and when I mention top talent, I'm really thinking in the vein of marketing, operations, technology. There's a couple other functions, but even if we were able to get one of these top talented individuals, most of us aren't in a position through our work to be able to fully utilize that top talented person. And so we hired one of the like greatest marketing kind of like design people that I've come across in my many years of being in the general space. And what we learned, what we did, and what I was so thankful for is in-house again here, being 8 nonprofits here, we're able to do some internal experimentation prior to potentially doing anything out. So we basically hired this person on our team, and then we made them available free of charge to the nonprofits here, just to have an understanding of, if you really have someone that really knows what they're doing, how many organizations can they support simultaneously? And through that, what we learned is like one person that really knows what they're doing could probably support 4 organizations simultaneously. But because we're not like looking at this from like a Uber perspective, like we're not trying to we're not looking at humans as like an asset to try to maximize, utilization. So through that, we basically started to put together a model where we will bring some of the top talent, because let me give a little more context. What happens so often in many nonprofits is like we will look for a communications person or marketing associate. Those salaries will typically look like 40 grand to upwards. I've seen it be between 40 to 70,000, but it's typically like in the 40 to $60,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, typically isn't enough money to attract top talent in that position. So then a number of nonprofits will hire a kind of a junior person that then doesn't necessarily have all of the skills and expertise to do the work they really need. Flip this on this other side. If one person can kind of handle 4 organizations, but again, because we're not trying to like work them to exhaustion, you had them maybe handling 3 organizations, all of a sudden you could see a situation where 3 nonprofits potentially pool $30,000 each to provide a $90,000 salary, which is competitive for a design person, almost competitive with almost any type of firm. And now you get both parties win, and that the nonprofit gets the type of expertise they need while spending a fraction of what they otherwise would. And the person that's hired gets the money that they want while getting to do very impactful work. And most importantly, they are more utilized than if they were just hired to one organization that they're kind of sitting idle for a good amount of time. So that's an example of some of the experimentation. And it kind of goes on and on and on because we're just trying to learn, man. And all of this is towards, I just feel like the community deserves a lot more than they have historically gotten. And so we got to take some risk in order to give them more than they have historically gotten. And it's going to take that, again, that experimentation to figure some things out.
That's absolutely amazing. And we could talk for 2-3 hours about this initiative is amazing to me. And that's why I wanted you on this podcast, because I was just, when we first talked, or not first talked, but when we talked last summer, I believe, when I heard that you got the position, and I just wanted to learn more about it, because it was just a situation that I was like, what does that name, the Love Building, mean? What is that? What is that? And I think you've summed it up in some ways, but I think it's what also you're saying is like, yeah, I can say all this, but you need to experience it.
Truly.
So what is, because we're at the end of our time here already, believe it or not.
What they say? Time flies when you're having fun.
It is absolutely. This has been really great. So what's the best way for people to reach out to you so they can schedule a time to meet with you, or just to have a conversation more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So I'll say that, so we're located 4731 Grand River Avenue in Detroit, Michigan. Zip code is 48208. We're located in the beautiful Core City neighborhood, and we are open Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So folks are actually welcome to just come visit us if they'd like. If you'd like to be a bit more intentional and structured in that, then you can go to our website, which is thelovebuilding.org. And you could reach out to us at info@thelovebuilding.org to schedule a tour, or just to reach out to us. Because the other thing is, like, there's a lot that we're attempting to do, but we can't do. Again, we're a 7-person team, and even with the 7 other great organizations we have here, we can't do it. We won't be able to do everything that we're attempting to do on our own. So it is actually like very important that anybody that's trying to really do anything for this city, especially as it relates to health, wealth, and love within the city, we're very, very open to, again, combining and conquering and exploring collaborative partnerships. So if you ever are doing anything or you have something ongoing or you're thinking about something, we welcome you to reach out to us and see if there's a way for us to plug in with each other and to create a mutually beneficial relationship between our respective efforts. We've done that with a lot of success, but we really want to add, it's one of those things where the party gets good when more people join it, and the more the merrier, seriously, right? And so that's an open call to anyone that's attempting to do something that is positive, impactful within the city of Detroit, or even beyond, because we've also connected with colleagues across the state of Michigan and actually across the nation, because we can learn from their, while some of our challenges are distinct, a number of our challenges are shared, and we can learn from each other on our respective journeys. In any event, folks can reach out through info at the Love Building. Check us out, thelovebuilding.org. And man, there is we have a monthly event that we do called Love at Night. This is done typically every third Thursday. In any event, it's 7 to 11 p.m. And what's really cool about this event, man, is we serve at the Love Building. We serve a few different communities. And what we recognize is that, like, those communities, unfortunately, don't often overlap as much as they should. And so this was kind of our way of, like, having a great event to bring folks together, just like regardless of background. And man, it's worked. It's really worked. Because, sometimes you go to like a community event and you don't know the people. It could be awkward, so forth. You're tired, or what have you. Or we've created an environment where you come into the space and just organically, man, people are like willing to connect. And the backgrounds, like we got from 7-year-olds to 85-year-olds, nice. From people that are big in business to people that are big in nonprofits to the area resident. And when folks come in here, we've kind of created an environment where folks feel just comfortable to connect in a way that I just haven't seen in too many other places. And it's so rich. But to your point, it's one of those things you got to experience. So again, if you go to our website, and the last thing I got to say, excuse me, I'm probably extending this thing. But if you go to our website, you'll see a calendar of our events. But the other thing that we've done, man, is because there are so many other organizations that are doing great events that are supportive of the social justice community and the creative community, we've created something called the Love List. And we are very fortunate to have this kind of like growing subscriber base, a couple thousand, I think, at this point, and it's growing every week. So every week now, we have folks that basically submit events that they have going on across the city, and we circulate that. We, of course, assess and make sure that it's aligned with values and such like that. But every week, thousands of people get to see those events, and we have I think at this point, like a 60% click rate, and then folks are clicking into different events. And we've heard from other folks that, I think that there are a number of organizations and people that throw events, and they put so much into the work of the actual event. And the last thing that happens, unfortunately, is the marketing of the event. And so you have these beautifully designed events that are sparsely attended. And this is a mechanism that we're leveraging, a tool that we're leveraging to kind of shift that. And so far, so good. So that's another offer that we open up to the community at large to be able to leverage us. But we're here again to be a community asset. We wanna connect and combine and conquer for good. We want to propagate love. And maybe the last thing I'll say, and I keep saying that because there's so much. If I had only looked at the time, Paul,
that's all right.
I think we're at a time where I'm just going to end on a corny note, man. There's something that kind of overtook this country a few months ago that was really rooted in kind of divisiveness and even some hate and fear and uncertainty. And I think that uncertainty really brought about fear and even hatred because let's just be real. We're entering something that none of us have previously seen. This is new to all of us, whether we're talking about advancements in technology, whether we're talking about a number of institutions that we've relied on for hundreds of years, no longer being able to serve us in ways that they've done in previous generations, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of precarious, people are finding themselves in increasingly precarious situations. And unfortunately, divisiveness uncertainty and fear kind of overtook this country for a moment, but I think it's just a moment. I think what we really need is, instead of us dividing and kind of, we've over-indexed on independence and individualization. And what we really need to do is we need to come together, and we need love. We need love. And so to end on a corny note, man, it's like, come to the love building. We really need each other. And I think that despite where we are and all the challenges that we're confronted with within our current society and around the world, there's nothing that we can't figure out if we do come together. And so we're trying to create a movement here that's really rooted in unity and love, because once you get that, that's the stuff that you need to kind of power all the biggest things that have ever happened, is when we come together with a shared vision, or at least, if not even a shared vision, a shared understanding of an ideal that we're all aspiring for. And I think we have a lot of commonality around some of the things that we all want, even if we're divided on some of the peculiar details. So in any event, come and get this love, man.
Perfect. Thanks again for stopping by on the podcast. We really appreciate all the words. And yes, spread the love, be the love, do the love. I love it. So there you go. And so thanks, Kwaku. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Paul, man. My high appreciation, and anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all again for taking some time to listen to this program, and don't miss the next episode coming out in a couple weeks. If there's someone you know that you would like to hear their journey, please email us at missioncontrol@UnoDeuce.com. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and give us a review. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time in the Control Center.